property. That's much easier. I know. Trust me. Nothing goes. If you have identified it, that is much easier. And if it's possible to do value for money in a shorter period of time, it can be done. And the property that I think, I'll leave it at that, it is, there is sufficient property within that property for serious expansion and suitably located and whatnot. So I want to encourage us all to get this done so that we can have some place up there, even if it's temporary for East Town and North Side. There are people too, and that's what it was used for. But we really need it. We got Miss Ina down in a corner down in West Bay. She's just displaced. Oh, in West Bay. And then there are others who are almost should be in a place where they're properly cared for.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I want to indicate that Lands and Survey have been working very closely with us. I do not feel in any way that they're dragging their feet with regards to this particular issue. And we've requested of them some very clear and specific information so that, as the Honorable Premier indicated, we want to know that we are getting value for money. We want to know that we have explored the option of the purpose-built facility versus the existing direction that we're going in with purchasing existing structure, and what the cost and the time frame is going to look like. Lands and Survey are all looking at these pieces and providing us with relevant guidelines. I am very pleased with the information that we've received so far and will continue to work very closely with that department.
Member for Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would make a request, if possible. Ms. Echenik indicated about considering the facility within the area of Foster's. I would ask you and the minister, in light of the elderly in the eastern districts, at one time, before you were in the administration there, another department, we had a small office at the Civic Center in Town. If you would, consider some of this, because when we got to bring the elderly people from East End, North Side, and the Town entire district, if you come up there in the morning, and most of us know the traffic, it's a nightmare, catching the buses. I know family members would be willing to bring them down, but there will be occasions when they have to actually go to do something within that office. If you would at some time in the future consider you would be taking so much, actually, the traffic off the road by allowing these elderly people to stay a little bit further east than having to come into the Georgetown area. And there's no relief in sight, and I would ask that you and the minister give consideration to that satellite office that was up there. It was very functional, very helpful. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we appreciate the information being provided to us. I know the Director for the Department of Children and Family Services were looking at the needs and demands within the district, and will be taking that into consideration as we prepare the upcoming budget. In the interim measure, it is important that I mention that social workers will continue to be actively in the districts. So in the event that persons are unable to come to our central location, we will be more than happy to accommodate them by going to them.
Member for East End.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I was I would like to go on to a slightly different thing, but related. The closed Sunrise Cottage, Old Teacher Cottage, as the premier knows. Who's the guy from prison? Director of prison, and Miss Paulinda spoke to me separately, but about the renovation thereof. So I was awaiting them, because waiting to see when that would commence. I don't know. I don't know if the chief officer knows, because I'm not very comfortable with the security of that building. I have received complaints or reports of people tending to live somewhere in its precincts. It's right down the little cabana or something. I have tried to check, but I have also asked the police to do some rounds there. Do you know when, if that will start?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will be happy to obtain an update on that and provide that information. I think they are quite eager to get that facility, have that facility reopen for some of their community activities, especially the programs that the community development officer have planned. So I think that that's one of the priorities for the director, but I'll be more than happy to get an update and provide that to you.
Yeah, because I believe that the Community Development Officer, I think is the title now, that we have there. It would be an ideal place to open an office there for that person, for that position, so that it can be properly coordinated through that office, because there is sufficient space there to do the daycare, because we need to take out some of those walls anyway, because you don't need the individual rooms for that. And then put one of the rooms into an office for the development officer, because that's what I thought we would be doing. That's the direction I thought we would be going into. So I'm supportive of that, and will assist with the renovation, which I indicated to the prison and Ms. Paulinda.
Mr. Chair.
All in. Member for
Yep,
Ulex.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wonder if the chief officer could give us an indication of what the projected numbers are in the eastern districts for elderly persons needing housing. Or to be housed, yeah, going forward.
Mr. Chairman, if we can be clear, you mean assisted living? Okay.
Mr. Chair, through you, unfortunately, I would not have that information readily available. More than happy to provide some additional information to you in terms of projections and some indication of those persons that have been identified as potential clients for residential facilities, but exact numbers at this point I would not have available to you.
And I know this is a tricky one, but to put just to ask it, I know we have roughly in the Eastern Districts about 3,000 elderly, with another about 12,000 approaching that status. In terms of in terms of planning for the future, have we thought about a public-private partnership in order to develop this sort of facility? I know sometimes with these projects, costs become a major factor, but is that something that we've looked at?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did have several meetings last year with private entities to explore these options. It is, at this point, still a project that we're moving forward with as a government project as opposed to that partnership with the private entities. The two entities were overseas persons coming into the jurisdiction, and they were some aspects of the plan that were not necessarily meeting our particular needs.
And Mr. Speaker, I don't think they really were, in the strict sense, public-private partnerships. The ones I saw certainly were, and I have one individual who keeps messaging me about this. They essentially want to build facilities, and essentially government rent them or lease them is essentially what, I mean, government will pay them some money to do these things, right? So, I'm not really sure that's why I call it public, I mean, that's not really what I consider a public-private partnership. It's, but I'm not saying that we should completely dismiss these ideas, but it will mean essentially the government is continuing to fund. Nobody's giving us anything. I mean, government will be paying for the persons to have the benefit of the facilities.
Member for East End.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I wonder if anything did materialize with Health City in that regard. Remember, that was part of their overall plan to provide assisted living, not necessarily for government, but certainly government could utilize it because of it being in the environment that it would be in around the hospital. It would be so much better to treat our elderly and them living there and stuff like that. Did anything ever materialize on that? And
Mr. Chairman, the leader of the opposition is correct. That is, and I say is because I hope it's not gone away, that is part of their overall master plan development. But nothing has been done that the government is aware of with regard to moving that forward up until now.
okay. Mr. Chairman, if no one else on that line, are all of these 47, 57, 87, and 95 all under this ministry? Under Mrs. Ichanike?
Yes, they are, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Can I skip to the last one there, please? Or you just want to deal with the
Mr. Chairman, I think we'd like to get the vote on each one as we go by. I mean, it's just the two of us for all of them. So,
Yeah, and what I was going to suggest, Premier, if you're comfortable, we just take all the questions and I put everything to one vote.
Yeah, I think that I would support
I'm
that.
happy to let it go like that, Premier.
If the Premier is comfortable with switching from one. If the Premier is comfortable with getting questions on all of them, and then when they have expired all the questions, then you can vote it.
Mr. Chairman, I like to take my things in installments. So.
All right. Let's take it one at a time then. So
I don't like to risk it all on one.
But you like doing giving though.
Are
You
there any
like
further
giving all
questions
one
on
time though.
TP
None of
41?
installments, and you're giving.
All in favor of TP 41, permanent financial assistance, $436,050. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no. Ayes have it. TP 47.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to follow up on the leader. Is he saying we can take the rest of them in block?
No.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know. You see, he says he like it in small bites of our installment. No, I didn't say that.
Oh, okay.
Let's get it straight now.
Okay.
What I said was we could question all of those together and then take the vote on all of them. You were confused, you wasn't confused, you just trying to get your way.
We're open for questions.
Mr. Chair.
You want question on all of them, and then you do it?
We're open to TP 47, ex gratia benefit payments to seamen and ex-servicemen for $396,100. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is not directly related to this, but it's under this ministry, so I hope that the chief officer will be willing to answer. In respect to persons who were out there working through COVID-19, the lockdown, were any of the staff at NAU awarded any, what was the payment? Any benefits as a result
Member
of
for Georgetown Central, that issue is not on the TP 47.
it has to do with the staff of the NAU, which
This is ex gratia payments to seamen and veterans.
which is done by that same ministry.
Mr. Chairman, we are dealing with appropriations to the Minister for Community Affairs, which are set out in the bill. That's what we are here to respond to. Otherwise, we will be all over the place on every issue that the member wants to talk about. Can we stick, Mr. Chairman?
I have a question
to
on
the-
the 47.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll go to the member.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize, but we haven't resolved my matter yet, because I understand you're the chair, you're the director of this committee. Now, I want to be treated fairly in respect to things. So,
You could never say you haven't been treated fairly.
No.
and
You've been
given
giving me my
opportunity.
opportunity to ask questions, sir. But I'm saying that if we're going to allow a little bit of variance in respect to the questioning, if you do it for one, you're going to do it for all. If not, then don't do it for anybody. But what I'm saying is this falls under the same ministry. Now, it's difficult for me when I see that is happening with other members, and then I ask the question and it's not allowed. I see that the Premier is trying to control your line of questioning as a chairman, so I'll allow you. I'll just stop there.
No. Questions on TP 47. Member for East End, you had a question.
Mr. Chairman, this question may sound a little generic, but, and maybe more so for the Premier, how the veterans increasing?
You mean how is
The numbers.
the number of veterans or the amounts being
No.
given?
I ain't worried about the amounts. I'm just, the amount of financial, I'm just worried about the numbers. How many?
Because we are treating the veterans and seamen better than they've ever been treated before in terms of financial assistance. That's why the number gets bigger.
The number of veterans in...
No, the dollar amount.
No.
You're not objecting to that, right?
I didn't object to that.
Okay.
I am wondering, you and I have been here for 20 years. Next couple of days. When we came in here, that was lower. That number was lower.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure where the leader is getting or coming to the view that the number of veterans is increasing, because it most definitely is not. What's increased consistently since this government has taken office is the financial assistance to not just seamen and veterans, but people on permanent financial assistance. So the dollar amount has consistently risen since we've taken office. They are receiving more in dollar terms than they have ever done. But the number of veterans is sadly, as time takes its toll, continuing to decrease.
Mr. Chairman, I recall specifically that this House resolved, and the law specifically says, veterans who served in World War II and the Home Guard. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, my concern is we discussed in here that there were the veterans of those wars were less than 50 over the last few years. I can bring and show you. And that we were not responsible for the Korean War and nor the Vietnam War and all those wars. Now, if that has changed, then I'm fine with that. But I'm asking how come they have increased?
Mr. Chairman, there have been no veterans added to the assistance role in years and years and years. There are a few seamen who continue to come on still, but we are down to 91 veterans. Now, if a veteran passes away and leaves a widow, she continues to receive the benefit until her passing. But there have been no veterans added to the roll in many, many, many years. Seamen, yes. Veterans, no.
Mr. Chairman, I know sometimes my memory may be fading, but not much. But anyway, I shall concede that one. I'm wondering, what percentage is this seamen going up? Because I believe it'll probably shoot up in the not too distant future because of the last cohorts of seamen.
Your generation. There are currently 841 who are receiving benefits. I don't know.
It should be more.
I don't know if we have the number, the percentages of. We don't have that kind of breakdown.
It should be more than that now, though, because they are coming of age right now.
That's all on the roll now.
Maybe they're not applying because of their the new criteria. It may be they're not applying, because I know there are a number of in this country that would round my age and just younger that I was sailing with.
Member for Savannah.
And Mr. Chairman, just for completeness, we have no pending applications.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell those they can apply and take their own chances at it. Mr. Chairman, I have one other question on the last one that I would
Member Savannah, you prepared to give way?
Mr. Chairman, if the debate questions on that is finished, if we could take the vote on that one.
Member for Savannah did have a question.
Okay.
See the chairman continue to treat me like how cow treat last year, calf, but my honorable colleague from East End. But as I reflect back, and this is specifically to the the military people, and I was trying to find it in the planning estimates. I noticed that it went down dramatically, and I wondered why now that they came, but I can't find it in here. What happened that it went back up? In this, Arden, can you find it?
Mr. Speaker, what went up? The numbers? The numbers of veterans?
the amount that they had in the planning estimates for the ex-servicemen
Right, so,
had went down in what they planned to do, and now
right, so,
quite dramatically, actually, I thought.
right, so when we took office in 2013,
But no, that was the shared budget I'm talking about.
oh, this year's budget, I don't know.
Mr. Jefferson, could you take a look, see what I'm talking about there? See if you can find it. Yeah, that's this year.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if this is an explanation, but the chief officer advises me that in previous budgets, there were separate line items for each of veterans and seamen, and in this budget, they're combined. So there's just one line item that combines the two, because they receive exactly the same amount in terms of financial assistance, yeah. But members of these two groups currently receive $850 a month, and on January coming, that'll rise to $950.
We can still check that. I wouldn't hold the vote up. I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Remember what I can share with you under the present appropriation bill for 20 and 21 on the TP 47 ex gratia payment benefit payments to seamen and ex-servicemen. There is an amount that was appropriated of $9,843,000 for this financial year, 2020, and for 2021, the amount increases to $11,115,000. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, we based on our records, it seems we've lost something like 10 this year, so. Yes, because it rises to $950, the benefit a month. Mr. Chairman, can we get the vote? Can we take the vote?
All in favor of TP 47, ex gratia benefit payments to seamen and ex-servicemen, $396,100 standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye. Those against, no. Ayes have it. TP 57, children and family services support, $10,000. Are there any questions? There are no questions. All in favor of TP 57, Children and Family Services support for $10,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. Ayes have it. TP 87, Temporary Financial Assistance, $2,119,465. Are there any questions? TP 87. There are no questions. All in favor of TP 87, Temporary Financial Assistance, $219,465 standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. TP 95, Temporary Support to Non-Caymanian Residents due to COVID-19, $2 million. Are there any questions?
Yes, sir.
Member for Boddentown West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just of the $2 million that was spent, can the Honorable Premier provide a breakdown on the amount that was spent for food versus rent?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have a breakdown in terms of persons that we provided services to. The detail of the cost of it, we will have to provide at a later date.
Okay.
But I'm more than happy to indicate the number of persons that benefited from the food services and the number of persons that benefited from the rental services.
Yeah, actually, well, while you're at it then, because what I just wanted to get an idea of is, well, which you can provide at a later date, that's fine, the food versus the rent, and then the average value for the food and versus the average value for the rent, and then pretty much the different people in the different categories, because I'm just trying to understand, to get a better idea in terms of on the rental side versus the food side, on the food side where the real issues were during that time. But this is something I think was actually quite commendable for the government to have done that, 12 people when the borders were closed, and I think that's the Caymanian thing and the right thing to do at the time. But we're just trying to get an idea in terms of where the needs were so we can plan for the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And through you, Mr. Chair, just for the benefit of everyone in terms of the numbers that we do have, I'm more than happy to provide that now if that would be helpful. We had 842 persons that benefited from food cards, and that process took place from April until the end of July. And as it related to persons that received rental support, 210 persons received a one-off rental assistance, and it was with a cap of 500 or less.
Sorry. If this was a one-off and the food vouchers were valid at $150 per person?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the food cards that were provided was on an ongoing basis from April through the end of July. The rent was only one-off.
Okay, and the food vouchers was $150 at a time?
That is correct.
For a month or for 2 weeks?
Every 2 weeks.
So then that means roughly, that's my calculation, that's roughly $378,900 based on the amount that you would have given if you did 842 people at a, it's a May, June, yeah, July, that's 3 months, right? Yeah. At 150 times 3, that's $378,900. Is it 2 times a month? Okay, so that'd be by 6. Okay, so basically looking at almost over $1 million that we would have probably paid out in rent. Rough calculations there, but all right, no problem. I'll just wait till you give me the official numbers, that's fine.
Member for Georgetown Central.
I got the answers from her response. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member for East End.
Thank you. 9 to 5, right? TP 9 to 5. Okay. Mr. Chairman. And I think that the Minister for Tourism, I should have asked this question then, but I got some reports subsequently, so I'll bring it up here. Are we doing any due diligence with any further ex gratia payment? Or payments out of here? Are we continuing to do that? Yes.
No, Mr. Chairman, as the Chief Officer indicated, this was ended in July.
Yeah, I understand that, but are we continuing a program of helping non-Caymanians over here?
No.
We're not. Only the tourism thing, right? Those who were working in the tourism industry.
But again, that only applies to Caymanians and people on permanent residence. People on work permit are not receiving that assistance now.
Okay. But once they,
The reality is, if you are here, now that the borders have sort of reopened, if you are here on a work permit and there is not work for you, we encourage you to go home.
yeah. But, so the tourism one is that if you're back on work, then that stops? Yeah, I know it's only $1,000 a month, but that continues then.
That continues for displaced tourism and for tourism workers. So, I mean, the reality is that if you would have a tour business, or you drive in a tour bus, or you drive in a taxi, you know, you are not earning. You might be getting a little bit of work here, but you're not earning very much unless you've gone into some other related fields.
That's all I'm asking.
It's meant by way of assistance. We can't completely replace the income of persons, but we're still trying to assist them because
I don't have a problem with it.
most people are not.
I'm just wondering if it was being given to none.
No.
Mr. Chairman,
No.
just for the sake of clarity, the persons that received in the very early days, these people under this vote, these were people that were stuck here, couldn't move. They were employed, now had no employment, but were stuck here, and so we had to take care of them to that extent. Am I correct? Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, everybody has to live, everybody has to eat, everybody needs a roof over their heads. So this was a compassionate gesture of the government, but we also believe it was our duty as human beings, really, to look after everybody who was here, because they had no choice, they had to stay. Now that the borders have reopened, if people want to go, they can go. And so we encourage those who can't work because they don't have work anymore. This is persons on work permit to leave, and we have done so. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there may be isolated instances, but I certainly haven't had any reports for a long time of persons here who are not residents, permanent residents, or Caymanians who are not working but who are looking for assistance. I'm not hearing about it. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I usually hear these things, believe you me.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make it very clear that I never once objected to that. There are many in the country who did object to it, but I believe we created our own bubble and shut down the economy. Therefore, the government has a responsibility to make sure people eat and wash their skin with water and stay in electricity too. That's a responsibility we take on. Every country in the world, when you have a crisis, the government takes the responsibility of stimulus to ensure that not only their citizens, but those who are within their borders survive. And I've always supported that move. My concern was, do we still have people here on it? The Premier has confirmed that we have invited them to leave because we have now opened the borders, and the opportunity is here that they can leave if they're not working, if their job has not started back yet.
All in favor of TP 94?
Mr. Chairman, at moments like this, I almost want to invite the leader of the opposition to come over to this side, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I would go over there, but I got wash him in the blood of the lamb. And you got kill here a lamb in the world, got enough blood, wash him.
Member for Town West. And then you.
I will see to the member from Georgetown Central for now, Mr. Chairman. Give him a chance.
Mr. Chair, just
No, you can't get away with them things.
since we're all washing each other in the blood of the lamb, maybe we all should take a dip. But that being said, Mr. Chair, I want to go back a little bit quickly to the breakdown. I know that the chief officer don't have exactly the numbers, but I was just trying to do some calculations just now. Am I correct that I understood there was 842 people who received the food vouchers?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
And am I correct to understand there was 210 people that received the one-off $500 for rent, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
And the rent was 500, correct? One time?
It was a cap of 500, depending on where the individual stayed. Their rent might have been slightly less than, but we had a cap of 500 to assist those persons.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I have a bit of a problem with the numbers then because we're allocating $2 million. Has all the money been used?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, it has not been.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, can you tell us how much money is left?
Through you, Mr. Chair, again, once the breakdown is provided, I'll be more than happy to provide the exact numbers in regards to the remaining amount.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, I thank you, Chief Officer. Well, you're budgeted for $2 million, so you should know what the numbers are because you're coming here to ask for a certain amount of money. But here's where I have the minor problem. You have 842 people for 3 months getting 6 payments, which totals to 900. If you times 842 people by 900, you get $757,800. So that's just the food. You asked for $2 million. And if you're just doing the rent for 210 people at $500, you get $105,000. That goes less than $900,000, but you're asking for $2 million. So I'm asking you, if this program is done, we're not helping foreigners anymore because we're not in that circumstances anymore, unless you're predicting to help another batch again sometime soon. Can you give us the idea as to why there's over $1 million that is not calculated based on those numbers?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we based our request of $2 million at the time in accordance with the numbers that we receive from Border and Control of persons that were in our jurisdiction on work permits that may have required our assistance. We processed all of the applications that came to us, and we cross-checked with the employers to ensure that those persons were not in any position where they were obtaining support or assistance from the employer. The persons that have been approved were based on the numbers that I have provided. So the initial request of the $2 million was to accommodate what we anticipated. The numbers that I have provided are the actual numbers that we provided services for, which has left a balance.
Thank you, Chief Officer. Well, based on the fact that this program is now finished, completed, and the numbers that you just gave this committee adds up to $862,800, I think that there's 1,137,200 left over. Can we make an amendment that you don't need that much? Because I'm quite sure there's other parts of the country who needs that money right now. Could possibly go to the regiment if you need it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have, based on the savings, been able to move forward with the opening of the senior facility and addressing some of our other needs that we had not anticipated we would be able to do within this budget cycle. So the savings are being utilized for very important projects within our ministry.
Mr. Chair, no doubt, I'm certain that the money could be used in other important places, but we're here dealing with appropriations now. And if we recognize, particularly for non-Caymanians, if we recognize that we didn't spend that amount of money, there should have been an amendment to this appropriation to reflect what was used and not over budgeting, unless you're going to show somewhere else where you're going to take this money away again, which makes no sense. So I don't understand the logic of that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, for the benefit of clarity, I just want to indicate that because we did not utilize the entire $2 million for the work permit holder project, we have been able to utilize the savings for our own Caymanians who are in need of our services and who will benefit from this savings in various areas.
Mr. Chairman, if I can explain, right? A lot of this that we are dealing with here now is essentially backfilling, right? So backfilling in the sense that the money has been spent and we are now seeking retrospectively the approval of Finance Committee. We were in a crisis and we just had to find the money to do so. So this provides the explanation as to and seeks the approval of Finance Committee for that expenditure. What the Chief Officer has said is they had an estimate, they came to Cabinet that this was going to cost $2 million. Cabinet approved that. They didn't spend all of that money, and then with the savings, once the program ended, of assisting persons who were on work permit, once that project ended, they were able to redirect the savings to important projects like the development of the seniors center that we spoke about this morning.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank the Minister and the Chief Officer for that answer. And no doubt we're not disputing that money that was being allocated for non-Caymanians be transferred to Caymanians to the amount of $1.137 million. What I'm saying is the accounting principles of how you record it has to be done correctly. Here's why. If you spend it somewhere else, me as a legislator who has to hold the government accountable through here, I cannot indicate where the spendings are if you're disguising spending for one area under somewhere else. So this is not the appropriate way to do it. So by all means, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't have spent the money on Caymanians. That's exactly what I want you to do. But I want it to be recorded the appropriate way within the appropriations. And you've had time to look at the numbers to see how much you spent and made the amendments to this bill before it came to this committee. That's what I'm saying.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to close the circle on that, then if we could just get an indication of where it was moved to, and an indication of, because it may have been in one of the items that we just voted on. So we just need that clarity so we can understand.
Are you able to answer that question? Not at this time? Okay. She had said she'd commit to providing the answer to how it's being done.
Mr. Chair, I think it's appropriate that the necessary amendments be made to reflect where the money was spent. Because if we approve this in its current form, not suggesting the money shouldn't be agreed to, but where it's recorded in the process would be wrong. Now you're the Minister of Finance. Now if you're saying that's different, then I don't know what to say. But I don't think this is appropriate how it's being recorded. I'll take your guidance on it.
Remember, we are asking this committee to approve the appropriations that were made by Cabinet up to a certain point in time. Okay? To my knowledge, and And that's what needs to be approved here today. But the point,
I understand that, but you have that authority, the law allows you to do that, but you gotta record it properly. And she needs to come back to you to say, I want to shift it under 12, right?
and that will come, but there will need to be a second supplementary bill to come, which will cover transactions from whenever till the end of the year.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that's all you
And
need
that's the answer
to
to
tell
the gentleman's
everybody
question.
that the next one, it will show that
It should show
the
that.
executive authority was granted to shift that.
Yeah,
That's all.
absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, you can take the vote, please, and let's move off of this. Just take the vote.
All in favor of TP 95, temporary support to non-Caymanian residents due to COVID-19, for $2 million standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. Ayes have it. That concludes the
No, Mr.
appropriations
Chairman.
to the Minister for Community Affairs.
Mr. Chairman,
Hold on.
I don't think it concludes it yet.
Okay.
If I may, I have, no, he hadn't took no vote. No vote was taken. On that, but he hasn't moved from the ministry. I said before he moves from the ministry. The vote, but I thought the vote was agreed on. Because I have a matter to raise before we leave the ministry. Me? No?
Come on.
Yes,
Can we
please.
go? Member for West Bay, West.
Mr. Chairman, I've been talking to yourself and the minister in regards to a very important matter, and that is the emergency shelter for the community in West Bay. Mr. Chairman, we have 16,000 people, according to the last census, and we need that. We don't have the proper shelter now. But we have church halls, or churches, church buildings, not halls, church buildings, that we can utilize if we do the same thing as we did with Borden Town. I know it's not finished, but I'm talking about along the same lines. Mr. Chairman, you have correspondence from them. One of them have been used over the years as polling station for general election, and even when people ran into that with that particular church, but both of them, those churches have been down, and so one of them were using the school hall. Home Affairs. I thought, well, when we discussed it, I'm hearing that it might be Home Affairs that is responsible.
Mr. Chairman, the chief officer has pointed out to me that this matter, which involves essentially shelter, is a matter that falls under hazard management, which is under the Ministry of Home Affairs, which we have not yet reached. So perhaps we should have this discussion.
If you want to leave it there, when we first discussed it, we didn't know where it would fall. So I'm happy to leave the matter there. But I'd not leave it there to come back to it when we reach page 14, which is Home Affairs. All right, I'm okay with that. I just want to place on record my thanks to the chief officer and her team for the sterling work that they have done, not just during COVID, but the community ministry have the burden of caring for people that normally can't take care of themselves. our poor people, handicapped people, all of that. And they have done a sterling job. And I can speak about NAU. I pay more attention to that because more people come to you about that. And I want to place on record my appreciation to her and her team since she's here for the, as I say, sterling work, and the counselor, and it's the Premier's ministry. So thanks go to them. But in this instance, I want to thank the Chief Officer and her team.
Mr. Chairman, before I ask, I want to thank all, to release the Chief Officer. I want to thank all members for their contributions, their questions, and the very good discussion on this ministry. But I also want to thank myself, although I've done so publicly on a number of occasions, the Chief Officer and all her staff for the tremendous amount of hard work and the incredible compassion they have demonstrated over the course, always, but particularly over the course of this COVID-19 crisis. They truly have been exemplary, and this country owes them a great debt, one which I hope the thanks of myself as Premier and their Minister in this House will go some way to paying.
Thank you, Premier.
Mr. Chair, since we're being allowed to give thanks, I would appreciate the opportunity to do the same.
I think Minister had wrapped up on
Mr. Chair, are you suggesting that both the Speaker and the Minister was given the opportunity to say thank you and
No,
we
sir, but
can't?
I think you had opportunity too. In your questioning, could have. I mean, I'm trying to wrap this up and move us along.
Mr. Chair, would you
sir.
give way to allow me to thank the good employees of NAU?
I give you 30 seconds, sir.
Thank you, sir. I just want to say to the Minister, to the Chief Officer, and particularly to the NAU staff who have been dealing with all that stress and continue to deal with it, all the pressures, particularly being exposed on a daily basis. We appreciate you, all the members of the opposition, and particularly those in Georgetown Central. God bless you and thank you. Keep up the good work.
Mr. Chairman, I omitted to do so, and I ought not to thank Councillor Harris, who has quite frankly been the de facto Minister for Community Affairs for most of this term. Without his stewardship of the ministry, my already hard life would be that much harder, because he essentially handles the day-to-day affairs of the ministry, and he has done an exemplary job.
Thank you, Premier. Excuse you. That concludes the appropriation to the Minister for Community Affairs. Colleagues, we're now going to turn our attention to the Office of the Commissioner of Police. So the appropriations to the Premier on behalf of the Office of the Commissioner of Police. 30 minutes. We turn our attention now to the appropriations to the Premier on behalf of the Office of the Commissioner of Police. EI 79, Office of the Commissioner of Police for $2,395,000. Are there any questions?
Yes, sir, Mr.
Member
Chairman.
for Boddentown West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just out of curiosity, I noticed the original budget was just under 1.1 million, and now is going to move to 3.5 million, which is 228% increase. Can we get a breakdown of what happened with the budget in on the project? Why this thing is moving from where it is? I mean, by this amount of money, almost $2.4 million over or extra. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, if I could direct the member to page 39 of the estimates. The reason is set out there. Reason for the appropriation change, West Bay Police Station project. The request is $2.395 million with respect to that particular project.
I thank the Premier for that, Mr. Chairman, and I did notice it, but I'm still going back to my original question. The original budget was 1.1 million, and now it's roughly 3.5 million. So is it that it was poorly budgeted, or is it that we had project overruns? I still need to get an explanation as to what happened.
So, Mr. Speaker, the overall estimated at this early stage cost of that project is more than $15 million. So, at the time that we presented the budget about this time last year, we were not far enough along the process to be able to do much more than put in a figure as something of a placeholder, right, which was the roughly $1 million. So now we are much further down the way, purchase the land, clear the property, and we need to fill it. So this is now the estimated cost of that. And next year, obviously, there'll be additional expenditure incurred as the project continues to move along.
Mr. Chairman, just want to thank the Premier for that. Just through you, so just so we're clear, we're going to be building a new police station in West Bay that's going to cost $15 million. Is that what the Premier just said?
That's the estimated cost of it, yes. None of this is a secret. We announced this in the last budget. I spoke to it at some length. Members debated it. So it is the numbers that we are, because the design of it is now moving along. So, but the first objective was to acquire the land, clear the land, fill the land, and as we keep moving along. So this will get paid for over a number of budget cycles.
Just so you're clear, and so there's no misunderstanding, Mr. Chairman, through you, we totally support the policing. It's just $15 million for a new police station in West Bay. I was just a bit shocked with the amount of money, that's all. I just think it's a lot of money, that's all, but that's just me.
Member for...
Mr. Chairman, if I can just say, we had some discussion in this same meeting about this, and I made a statement. I make so many statements, sometimes I can't remember who makes a statement, but I always remember most of the time what was said. is that this is not just a police station. In the sense, a lot of the administrative aspects of policing are intended to be located there. There's supposed to be also an indoor firing range and a whole range of other amenities which are necessary but are not currently part of the overall police estate at the moment.
Member for
Oh.
North Side.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, first of all, allow me the opportunity to thank the Chief of Police and his team of officers for the sterling job they're doing at Rumpoint. And I hope that any of these resources, my question is, do you need any additional resources to continue to do that every Sunday for the rest of the year and into next year? Because it has been very effective.
Mr. Chairman, Derek Byrne, Commissioner of Police, Office of the Commissioner of Police. The answer to that, sir, is that we are doing well with our resources at the moment, and we will maintain that policing operation in the Eastern District for the remainder of the year. It's a combined effort of the Cayman Islands Coast Guard and the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service.
Member for East End.
Mr. Chairman, it is always good to hear our support for the police. I think I have gone on record a very long time ago, and my entire political career has been committed to supporting the police department. We did this same thing 15 years ago, and it has not come to fruition. We did it in Bodden Town, and the land and fill has stayed there to this day. One, I don't want to see it happen in West Bay too. Number two, I need to know when we're going to proceed on at least the now member for Northside, the former member for Northside, and myself request to have a full-fledged police station in the Eastern District, like we are doing in West Bay, which has more population, which we have agreed a long time ago would facilitate the entire complement of services, if I say that right. That is because the plans up there were for shooting range and helicopter pad and forensics and armory and whatever, if that means that's what that meant, full complement of services. What plans are there for that?
Mr. Speaker, there are no plans. The current administration has no plans for that. We have another 7 months in office. Obviously, after that, the country would choose who the next administration should be, and we'll see what happens then. But this government is seeking, as far as possible, to complete or move forward as many of the projects that we undertook to do during our tenure. That was not one of our commitments. Not saying it's not something that should be explored. I'm simply saying that we have made no such announcement. We have no commitment and no plans to do that during this administration.
Is this land adjacent to the one in to the police station in West Bay? Okay. as I recall, when we developed, should I say, the policy or plans for Bodden Town, we were also part of the West Bay. The redevelopment was also to purchase that land next door, right behind Mr. Jimmy Powell house, I think, something there. I wonder why this government went ahead with that and could not simultaneously go ahead with the one Bodden Town, which the land was already purchased.
Mr. Speaker, West Bay was, the police station was the need for a new station in West Bay was determined to be the most critical piece of police infrastructure we need, even more important than replacing the one in Georgetown Central, which is also, we also desperately need to do. This property is 2.7 acres. The mucking and filling approximately comprise approximately 87,830 square feet of the land. So what we're trying to, as I've said, what we're trying to do is to move this forward in phases and to be able to fund its construction over a couple of budget cycles. Government has no end of demands for things that are important, and it is always a question of the judgment of those in authority at the time as to which moves forward and when. So as I've just said, if the leader of the opposition believes that what he suggested ought to take priority, I encourage him to make it part of his manifesto and campaign on that basis, make the commitment, and see what happens. We are at the tail end of our administration, in my case, 2 terms, and we are trying to wrap up as many of the projects as we possibly can and to move forward as far as possible those that we have committed to and are at a stage where you can actually get some physical activity going.
Mr. Chairman, I thank the Premier, and certainly I will make it a priority, and we will campaign on that basis, just like he did for 3 terms. But I will not allow it, if successful, to go 3 terms to finish, or to not even start. There is a need for a full-fledged police station in the Eastern District, but West Bay is in desperate need of it also. I will not take that away from the police. But I certainly do not want to make it appear like I'm making the police a political football either, because we know how that is going to turn, and we know who that's going to turn to, and they're going to have their rounds on the radio trying to come in the offense. And when they come in their offense with their fires, I can light fires too. So I don't usually get them out because I don't carry around any extinguishers, but I can light fires too. Now, I will take his advice and campaign in the coming election, since he only got a few months left, in the coming election, to the people of the Eastern Districts that we will do it, but more importantly, that this government has failed them in not doing it.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr.
Question.
Chair. Thank you, Commissioner and Premier. Can the Commissioner confirm that all officers have received their honorariums for the COVID-19?
Through the chair, yes, I can, sir. It's my understanding all officers have received full honorarium.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, let me take this opportunity to say thank you, guys. Thank you, your service and your men, for all the hard work you've been doing. I want to say it now before I get cut off because I wasn't able to do it timely before. So thank you to your service men and women for all you do, particularly in COVID-19. Second question, in respect to the last budget, we heard discussions about acquiring some areas of extension for the Georgetown police station close by. Can you tell us where things are at with that? Has plans changed? Is it still moving forward?
Chairman, there are some plans in place for next year. A paper has been submitted to consolidate leases and to move towards acquiring a different premises in Georgetown Central, which will vacate the existing footprint of the Georgetown Police Station. It may take a little bit longer than a year or so, but there is an attempt to move incrementally from January some of the units, consolidate our leases, and move the Georgetown Police Station to what is a large commercial building identified by PWD. This will in effect vacate the existing footprint of the Georgetown Police Station.
So Mr. Chairman, just so members will know that the government has really been trying to focus on addressing what are critical shortcomings in the current police estate. We have tried for a couple of years actually to acquire one particular building in Georgetown that would allow us to essentially vacate what is the current Georgetown Central facility, free up that land for other purposes. We did not succeed in that initial one, although Commissioner, I haven't even said this to you, that they've come back to me personally last week. I didn't bother to respond. But we have now identified another, we think, very, very good and modern building that we are taking a lease of a substantial number of square feet. That building may well go up for sale in the foreseeable future, in a few years, and government can then look at whether or not that would serve the purposes of the Central Police in the long term. As I've said to members here in another context, there are a number of commercial properties in the Central Georgetown district which are not being utilized in the way they once were, because you find a lot of businesses moving or offices moving out into other areas, and they present, I believe, some good opportunities for those who want to redevelop them for other purposes or to use them for other purposes. And I've always felt that the discussions about moving the Central Police Administration outside of the center of Georgetown was not the ideal situation. So I believe what the Commissioner has just spoken to will give us an opportunity to evaluate how well that particular building serves the needs of the police service. And then in a couple of years, if the opportunity presents itself, we may be able to actually acquire the entire building and avoid having to go and build another building somewhere else at huge costs. So again, that'll be a matter for the next administration. We'll see what happens, but we are certainly trying to do everything we can to make sure in the immediate term that we provide for the needs of the police administration and policing in Central Georgetown to take us through whatever transition actually occurs in a couple of years.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, through you, thank you, Premier, for that extensive information. I noticed that next to the traffic department, the government has just recently cleared some land adjacent to it, which is also owned by the government. No, the one by Jose Gas Station. Does that affect traffic department in any way, or is there any plans to consolidate the two together? I know that there were some discussions at one stage where there may have been talks about that. Can you talk any bit to that? Does that clearing or future plans and development going to affect the traffic department in any way?
Mr. Chairman, if I can assist, we have received some preliminary notification that the Meteorological Office are going to conduct some construction on that site, which may mean that the Traffic Department will have to vacate, which is part of the wider strategic plan for a consolidation of our current estate for RCIPS. That has not been formalised, and I understand it hasn't come before Cabinet yet.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there are a number of things in play and a number of things in flux. Here, there is a plan by the Met Authority to develop a full-fledged meteorological facility in Cayman, one that would be able to serve perhaps even the region. The threat of storms and so forth is becoming increasingly major concern of every country in the world, and we want to be able to be on the cutting edge of that. So government owns a great deal of land in that area, what we used to call, when I was a boy, halfway pond area, Agnes Way, and so that is now being considered. And obviously we have to consider where we would relocate the traffic department to. So all of those things are currently being considered.
Mr. Chair, just in wrapping up, maybe in that consideration, they can also put the police records department all in one location. That would be more easy accessible for everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member for Bodden Down West, and then a member for East End.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the Honorable Premier. I noticed in one of the responses, the police commissioner referred to the wider strategic plan, and I'm just curious, just looking at the compendium of statistics that's done by the Economics and Statistics Office, as per what they reported. In 2016, there was 1,096 crimes reported or offenses in the eastern districts of Bodden, eastern and north side, compared to 904 in West Bay. In 2017, there was 958 offenses versus 845 in West Bay. In 2018, 874 versus 835 in West Bay. And in 2019, 960 versus 809 in West Bay. Considering these numbers and seeing that there's more offenses being recorded in the eastern districts of Bodden, eastern and north side, I'm curious as to what is the wider policing strategy with regards to policing in the eastern district, considering also the population in those three areas are greater than it is in West Bay. I'm just curious as to what are the government or the long-term plan in terms of policing, because I am uncomfortable with this policing issue becoming a campaign issue. We have always made sure that the police is independent, and I don't think this is something that should be included in any manifesto other than resources to fight crime. So I just want to be curious as to what is, even from a national security standpoint, or what is the overall strategy in terms of dealing with crime in the eastern districts of Bodden, north side and east end. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, sir. So looking at the overall strategic requirements for estate and accommodation, and looking at the competing demand for limited resources, West Bay, you may or may not be aware, had to be closed for a period of 6 months during the COVID. We had to seek emergency accommodation and bring in PWD to carry out emergency repairs. And the station itself is considered way beyond economic repair as not for purpose and for occupation, which is a pressing demand. The next main issue for me then is that Georgetown Police Station itself, the estate, has been more or less condemned by PWD and environmental health. And those are two pressing strategic accommodation requirements for the RCIPS estate. And as we move to the Eastern District then, we have the three stations, Bodden Town, Northside and East End, and appreciating that it is, the populations are increasing out there. We tend to use our mobile patrols from the centre to support the operations in the Eastern District. And in consideration of where we are at the moment, that is the best I think we can achieve within the constraints that are presented. And as I say, I put West Bay in order, number one in order of priority, Georgetown number two, and then conceivably into the future, it may be possible with the approval of Cabinet and Government to move to the Northern Districts, Eastern Districts, sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. But considering, through you, Mr. Chairman, considering that the biggest criminal threat is still drugs and guns, and that the Eastern Districts still have the largest coastline in terms of the importation of drugs and guns into the country, I mean, I would at least think that, and going back to the issue that we had made with the Coast Guard and everything else, is there then an overarching strategy between the police and the Coast Guard? Because I think at the end of the day, I'm still trying to find some comfort with regards to what is being done in the Eastern Districts. So I don't know if it's a combination or if that's been dealt with the Coast Guard or whatever. I'm just trying to get an idea of what the overall plan is with the Eastern District. I'm not saying that West Bay doesn't need resources. I mean, don't get me wrong, because West Bay has its own history and everything else, but at a minimum, I'm just trying to understand what's happening on the other side of the island.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, sir. So I think we go back and we look and see what resources are in place. We have our static uniform resources, and you'll be aware we have our two advanced avionic helicopters, H-145s, recently purchased, and the new vessels purchased for the Cayman Islands Coast Guard. And a considerable amount of our effort is placed on covering the Eastern Districts by our Aerial Support Unit and by our Cayman Islands Coast Guard, supported by our Firearms Unit. And we do tend to adopt an intelligence-led approach to policing. We get up there as often as we can, looking at the strategic picture, working through our command structures where we meet 2 and 3 times weekly. We pick up information from public representatives in the Eastern District, and we discuss the policing requirements and allocate our resources accordingly. So I do think that we spend a lot of time in the Eastern District managing what we see to be the threat and risk in the Eastern District.
Sorry, I'm just trying to reconcile the response, because I'm looking at the overall again in terms of the largest areas of offense, which is burglary, followed by criminal trespass, and then robbery. I mean, those seems to be the three in terms of the largest in terms of a mode of crime. So what I'm looking for, I mean, the helicopter is good and all and so forth, but in terms of burglary, criminal trespass, and robbery, we're looking in terms of resources. Now, maybe this can probably help. In terms of, I remember the last time you were here, there was an issue with the shortage or being able to recruit officers in a police station. Where are we now in terms of the projected numbers that you wanted versus what it is that you have now? Are we up to the full complement in terms of what is needed?
Mr. Chairman, the answer to that is I have not achieved optimum strengths at this time, and I do hope to recruit further into 2021, subject to the constraints that are there. And there is a need to allocate additional resources to the Eastern District, particularly Northside and East End. That is something we monitor very carefully based on the number of resources that I have. But we are working through that project through our HR department and a recruitment campaign in early 2021.
One of the things just want to raise, Commissioner, you and I had a brief, I think WhatsApp exchange on this maybe a couple of years back, was in terms of setting up an academy, because now we have a regiment that's coming up that'll be competing for people in the protective services area. We have a Coast Guard that is also now competing. We have CBC that is also competing. Is there a way in which we can create an academy for all of these different services? I think I'd forward you a newspaper article of what they were doing, I think with the University of Western is in Jamaica, and see if there's something that we can do with ICCI in terms of creating an overall school where we can basically have these, because right now, I mean, you have the regiment competing for the same group of people, you got a Coast Guard competing for the same group, and the police, and at the end of the day, is still our primary source of things. So was there any further thought given in terms of creating that academy, working something out with ICCI, UCCI, sorry, in terms of creating that academy where we can at least start having, even boosting up the police, even if it's through the reserve forces or something, in terms of getting the numbers up? Has there anything been progress with that?
Chairman, yes, sir. Very little progress has been made. Preliminary conversations or discussions did take place. I'm very much supportive of the idea. There's also been discussions taking place with the Civil Service College in terms of developing some joint training for the services. I do think it's a project for 2021 that could be taken forward and would be worth taking forward.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. And that's pretty much my last question is pretty much along the lines of, and I forgot to mention prison, because one of the things that, looking back at the annual civil service report that is done by the Portfolio of Civil Service, I noticed in terms of both police and prison that a large portion of the members are above the age, I think, of 45 or something in terms of aging. And they're also, both departments are also 50% non-Cayman, well, more than 50% non-Caymanian. I think at this standpoint, in terms of putting together some strategy in terms of trying to recruit more Caymanians within the service, and also at the same time, see what it is that we can do to get more people involved, because at the end of the day, having a force that is non-Caymanian and aging, we have more than 50% being above the middle age within the civil service is something that is unsustainable in the long run. So I'd be curious to see how those things are going to be addressed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Member for East End, and then we are going to take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, I hear the Premier say that he does not support he has always had reservations about moving the headquarters of the police station outside of Georgetown Central. I agree. I think its rightful place is somewhere within the Georgetown Central area. There was a plan one time and it had advanced quite a bit, to house the courthouse and the police station on that piece of property that the weather is now going. I'm sure the Premier will agree with me that the weather does not have to be in central Georgetown. That is a fact. That does not necessarily have to be in the central Georgetown. And there are some 8-10 acres there at the Pond Road, right? Halfway Pond, as it is commonly known. In those plans, it was to, whilst we did not like selling government properties in town, part of it was to sell where the police station is with a 3 to 5 year occupancy condition on it, and move the police station to there at Halfway Pond. There's no need for the Weather Bureau to be there, because the weather comes all over the country. Why haven't we thought about moving that out to the eastern districts? Well, outside, the periphery of Georgetown, so to speak. Because there's enough land up spots, put that. and then utilize that property, or we might still jointly utilize that, since we have now changed with the court for over here. Jointly utilize that for the police station, where we can have, because the biggest thing for the police station is storage of for forensic purposes. That is what is needed. I don't know how successful we will be moving into a building in town that already built building that does not even have parking in Georgetown, really. I don't know if we cannot look at these things to see how much we should utilize 8 to 10 acres up there by Jose, by Halfway Pond, to utilize that. I don't know if the Premier wants to take a stab at that, or take a look at that, the possibility of doing that, and even selling where the police station is. Not the glass house. I didn't include that in it deliberately.
Mr. Chairman, we have looked at I don't know how many possibilities of this in the 7.5 years since I've been Premier, and the leader of the opposition himself will recall us having considered these issues when we were in government together back in 2005, 2009. So I have looked, I think, at must be half a dozen different possibilities. There are two things that changed the plans for the court altogether. One was the noise factor, which the Chief Justice and his team just said was insurmountable and not acceptable to put that halfway upon. And the other was the plan that they were working on was nearly close to $200 million. So that just couldn't happen. So I think we have a way forward with the court facilities, again, over a phased period, so that government can manage. Hopefully, we get through this COVID crisis, government will be able to manage the costs involved in developing a modern facility, not just for the courts, but also for Cayman to become a center of arbitration, which is one of the Chief Justice's ambitions, but also something that this government fully embraces. We think it'll bring incredible amount of new business to Cayman, and that can only be good. The property where the police station is actually bigger than I think most of us believe, because it goes quite a ways back. And that combined with where the glass house is about 3 acres. It's quite a big piece of land. The leader of the opposition was giving me grief just now about not having moved forward with facilities in the eastern districts. I'm very conscious, as I'm sure he and other members are, of how time consuming and how long it takes to get a major government construction project out of the ground, let alone completed. And the need for facilities for the police, the house administration and other things it's beyond critical in central Georgetown. And so, as I said, we are going to sign the lease with this facility, for this building, for a couple of floors, is it, Commissioner? 2 floors. And we will see how well that goes. The building is quite modern. We think, and the people who assess it think, that it will serve very well. We'll see. But my own view is, and I may or may not be around in another dispensation, in a position where I can help to make decisions and influence decisions in this House and in Cabinet, but we'll see what the people say about that. But I don't advocate government selling the land where the current police station is, or indeed where the glass house is. I think if Cayman is to retain Georgetown as a capital in the long term, it is going to have to be a place that people want to come to work and to live and to shop and to dine and so forth. And so we are going to have to make it an increasingly attractive place with amenities that people want to be around. And that includes green areas. And so that's one of the things that Georgetown Central is missing. We allowed in the 70s, when this place was developing, too much construction without bearing in mind that we needed to save some green areas. And I think the opportunity now presents itself again, and it probably won't do so again, or if it does, it'll be another 50 years before it does. And any government that comes in needs to be looking at that for Georgetown. It fits beautifully with the government's vision on revitalization of Georgetown, to put in more green spaces, more facilities that attract people into the business district, including businesses. A lot of the businesses that have moved out and down to Cayman Bay have gone because of the amenities and because of the very welcoming nature of the area there and availability of stores, shops, restaurants, bars, the movie theater, the whole gamut is there. So I don't think we should try to make Georgetown the historic district that it is, and capital that it is, into a Cayman Bay. But I think there are lessons we can learn about what it takes to attract commercial activity into the district, including the need to have, what do you call those things again, where people can live. The multi-use thing, penthouses, that's the word I'm looking for, in the district, in the central business district. So I think Georgetown, and I pay tribute to Minister Hugh, and before him, Minister Tibbetts, and to Clyde we call him, and those who started the initial work on the revitalization, and to Colin Lumsden, who is really helping to push this thing forward. But a lot of people who have really bought into this idea and are passionate about preserving our capital and making it a place that people want to be. Again, I mean, those of us who are old enough to remember this was where everything happened. You had the first supermarkets in Cayman. This is where they were. You had By Right, Kirk Plaza, Comart. This is where everything happened. Then we got the various buildings that we see there now, and you got the first law firms and accounting firms and all of those things starting to happen. And that went on for close to 40 years. But what we've seen in the last 6, 7, 8, maybe even 10 years is the decline of Georgetown Central, the capital, as a business district, and the move of businesses away. So we have to reverse that trend. And I think a lot of the things that we are doing now, and some that are in train, are going to do that. So, as I say, my vision for things like where we put the police station and the kind of amenities that we make available in green areas, and the development of the Heroes Park and historical walking tours, trails and so forth. All of those things that I think are part of what we need. Those of us who are here, and those of us who will be back, or whoever else comes, need to continue if we are to preserve our capital and not have it in a few years be declared to be somewhere else.
Mr. Chairman, I thank the Premier, and I should say to him that when I was proposing this multi-use of Georgetown high-rise with penthouses on the top in the late 80s and early 90s, I was considered a crazy man. I don't know if it was before my time, but they told me that I was too young, too fresh. I got enough gray hair now, maybe they'll listen to me. But it all comes back to all of us, doesn't it? Some of us had vision, and there are many in here who are visionaries too, but nobody listens to us. I know you want to go up to the cloud. I don't have a problem with that, but with regards to the police station and stuff, I agree that we need greenery in Georgetown. I recall as a minister, the gentleman who is now the premier invited me to walk around Georgetown. I was Minister for Works one morning, and most people thought we were crazy to walk around Georgetown, but what he was showing me was to take this area and do a right around here, Albert Street, and pedestrianize it with pavers like they do in Europe. I recall him saying to me, and I'll give credit where it's due, that when people, whether they're tourists or residents or Caymanians who enter this area, they must know that they're in a different place, a sacred place. I recall him telling me that. But of course, we were never able to do that. I did some. I did in front of the town hall, and then I put planters along the road and put in ramps, handicap ramps, and that was because of Mr. Harry McCoy as well. You remember that? And then along came another government and moved the planters with the trees and never did put them back. But we started. We were on the same footing at that time. Hopefully we will get that, but I still believe that even if we don't sell where the police station is, I think we need to take down that glass house. That has become a hazard now. But I still believe that the police station needs to go up there by Halfway Pond, and it needs to have its proper facilities, particularly for forensics, vehicular forensics. They like to store them because that is pivotal in investigations and convictions in this country, and we need to expand the police station up there. I will leave it at that.
All in favor of EI 79, Office of the Commissioner of Police, for $2,395,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. That concludes the appropriations to the Premier on behalf of the Office of the Commissioner of Police. Colleagues, it's a very convenient time for us to take the lunch break. It is now 10 minutes to quarter to 1 by the clock.
Mr. Chairman, could I, with your permission, sir, thank the Commissioner for not just his appearance here today, but the tremendous amount of hard work that he and his team did during the COVID-19 crisis, and his many, many appearances, which reassured the people of this country so much during the many press briefings that we had. I think we're very fortunate to have him. He's an excellent commissioner.
Very well said, Premier. We'll take the break now and come back at 1:45 p.m.